Hi, my name is Anya Paintsil. I am a Welsh and Ghanaian textile artist, originally from Wrexham in North Wales, but currently living and working in Manchester. I've just finished my degree. I did fine art at Manchester Metropolitan University. I'm really happy to be able to say I am this year's recipient of the Wakelin Award, and Glynn Vivian have acquired one of my works, Mae'r at Cilchmeithrin. Today I'm going to talk to you a bit about my practice, what informs it, the techniques I use and what inspired me to work in textiles. So I'll start with the pieces behind me and just give you a brief description of how they're made. So they're both fully punch needled textile pieces, and both happen to be self-portraits actually. So this piece, which is called Your Mum Eats Like a Camel, is a portrait of myself as a child. Explores a traumatic childhood memory and is a comment on domestic violence, as well as being a comment on current debates around black hair. This portrait here is again me, and is a comment on the perceived vulnerability and weakness that comes with being diagnosed with a mental health issue. The piece is titled I Am the Predator, Not the Prey. Both pieces use traditional, well, not so much traditional, standard Afro hairdressing techniques, which I learned as a child. This is Senegalese twist made from just synthetic braiding hair, and this piece I have just normally braided synthetic hair, which I suppose I would call single plaits or box braids. Both pieces I think are quite typical of my practice. Like, I work a lot with self-portraiture as a form of introspection and self-examination, and kind of working through past traumas or understanding myself and how I relate to the world. I also often depict members of my family and close friends, and everybody I know pretty much features quite heavily in my work. The piece that the Glynn Vivian have acquired, Mae'r at Cilchmeithrin, is a portrait of my younger sister Mae'r, who at the time was at Cilchmeithrin. For non-Welsh speakers, Cilchmeithrin is Welsh for nursery circle, and it comes from a photograph of my sister at nursery. What inspired me to make that piece really was, and to title that piece using Welsh words, was kind of wanting to portray images of black girls, black women, and put them together with Welsh language. I feel like, for me, in my experience, Welsh identity is often given a connotation of whiteness, when British identity isn't necessarily. Like, you can be black, British Asian, but I am often met with surprise or shock when I tell people I come from Wales, including people in Wales. Like, I spent most of my early life living in Wrexham, being constantly asked on a day-to-day basis where I'm from. When I was in Welsh language education, and I was asked where I had managed to learn how to speak Welsh when I'd grown up with the language. My mum's family are from Anglesey and are first language Welsh speakers, so it was a kind of bizarre feeling of rejection, I suppose, but I wanted to cement these ideas of Welshness being a non-racialised identity and portray people like me in my work with Welsh words to kind of, I don't know, to kind of just say that we're here and we exist, and make people consciously examine their biases of what it means to be Welsh. So race and identity are really common themes throughout my work. So this is the most recent piece that I'm working on at the moment, which is actually going to be a portrait of my younger brother. At the moment I'm just doing the outline of his legs and feet, as you can see, and this is my punch needle tool, which I'll show you now. It's not particularly fancy, and I've worked with this one for years, but I love it, and it's the only tool I really use aside from a latch hook and occasionally a needle and thread for a bit of embroidery. Unlike traditional punch needling, I don't work on a frame, and what I do is just punch my needle into the fabric, which is Hessian, repeatedly, and pull the thread through the other side. I like to do this because it gives a less uniform texture than traditionally working with a punch needle would do. I like my loops to be uneven and my pieces to be quite organic looking, so that's why I do that. So just to show you what I'm doing, with my hand on the other side, I punch the needle through the fabric, and then here is the yarn, and I grab the loop to whatever height I feel like I want it. Like have been doing this for quite a long time, so I can feel the size, I suppose, or if I just want a longer loop, I'll just pull my hand out a little bit, or if I wanted a super long loop, I could just do that. But I tend to just work within a couple of millimetres. The main reason why I began working with textile and afro hair was to essentially bring together two skills that I had that are often deemed useless by society, as well as skills that I had learned outside of a formal education environment. I think there's something really interesting on both sides of the craft, so both the hair and the textile, with like rag rugging techniques and these kinds of textile techniques. It's quite common that they're passed down through generations from women to woman, and it's very, very similar for afro hairstyling. Though I learned to do my own hair as a child, it's quite common that people would learn from their mothers or their sisters or aunts. So I kind of, I don't know, I felt like I was bringing together two different elements of my heritage, my Welsh heritage and my Ghanaian heritage, as well as working within a kind of lineage and an area of art which has been created and practiced by women for generations. So I think that's really interesting. I also found that there is some commonality between rug hooking techniques and afro hairstyling, which I find really, really interesting. Like some of the tools that I'd use when creating a new hairstyle for myself or somebody else are similar to the tools that I'd use in afro hairstyling. So this tool, for instance, is a latch hook, which I use to make latch hook rugs, which two of my works are fully latch hooked. They're a self-portrait entitled Self-Portrait, and another one called Me and Jack. So to use a latch hook, you essentially wrap a piece of yarn around the base, well, not the base, the stem, and then hook it through a rug hooking canvas, and then pull the yarn through and make a loop and a knot. Similarly, when you are installing a hairstyle called crochet braids, you would put this tool through a cornrow hook a piece of crochet, whether crochet hair, whether it be like a faux lock or a braid or loose hair, through the cornrow, do a little knot, and then it would hang from your hair. So I find it super interesting that there is intersections in these crafts which are completely different and seemingly come from complete different places and have very different usages. But mainly for my work at the moment, I have been using a tool called a punch needle, which is this. I have like this rig isn't like the best one, like you can get some very fancy ones, but I'm quite happy with my little number. So I use this for pretty much all of my work. I work in quite a non-traditional way, so I don't work on a frame, which most punch needlers do. I like to work freehand, and I like to work with loose fabric because I feel, or it does give my works a less uniform and more kind of organic look to them, which I really enjoy, and I really enjoy being able to push my tool to create different textures without kind of needing to think too hard about it. Like, I love working with this tool because it's just so fluid but can be so precise, and I like to be able to manipulate it to make new different kinds of textures and see how far I can push it. Labour is also a very big part of my practice. Like, I like that you're able to see that with my work, that it challenges perceptions of textile being a dainty pastime when I'm creating things of such a large scale and using quite dark or perhaps angry or violent imagery in my work. So with the punch needle, it is just essentially, you can see, a hollow needle which I thread yarn through and then punch repeatedly into Hessian fabric. I've been really influenced by a lot of feminist artists such as Orly Kogan, Judy Chicago and Miriam Shapiro, as well as my all-time favourite Faith Ringgold, in my work and working within a kind of feminist lineage as well. Something I found really interesting. One of my biggest inspirations for my practice is Dr. Julia Skelly, who is a contemporary feminist craft writer, and she says that all the decision to work in craft, especially craft associated historically with femininity, is a inherently political choice because of the historical denigration of craft associated with womanhood. I really messed that up, but I think you get the gist. And that is something that's really important to me and definitely motivates me to work in textiles. I hope you enjoyed my little talk about my practice, and I hope you can attend Glynn Vivian to see my work. Thank you very much. Bye bye.